Hollywood Boulevard. You're listening to SoFloRadio.com. SoFloRadio.com presents CEOmanship, becoming a leader in today's business world, with your host, Steve Gordon, CEO of Gordon Partnership Group, an international business consulting firm specializing in CEO bootcamp, sales team training, as well as client growth and retention. Visit GordonPartnershipGroup.com. Gordon Partnership Group. Your success is our business. And now, here's your host, Steve Gordon.
Here we are.
Here you are.
Here we
I'm going to
are.
move your microphone right away. Put that on the right side of your plenum.
So that I could actually look
So
at our guests.
You can look at the guest, but also so we don't block you with the
There we go.
Mr. Microphone.
The Mr. Microphone. We've actually
the camera to pick up your plenum.
Punum is a word that they use here in South Florida and in New York. It's a Yiddish word for face or pretty face. So I just figured I'd tell our guests
Steve
that.
has a Shana punum.
That means a very pretty face.
Yes, indeed.
That's what it means.
Happy
well,
Monday.
yeah. So happy Monday! I can't believe it. Thank you, everybody, for coming back. We were off last week. Interesting. Finally, you all know that my wife Lori and I have moved, and we moved into our home. Kim, you were there. Our guest Kim was there, actually, in that home. Well, now it has furniture, because after 9 months, the truck finally made it from Connecticut to. You moved the microphone so that the camera could see my face, and you reached right in front of me.
I did a reach around. It occurred
You did
to me
not do a reach around.
It occurred to me that the microphone was far away from Kim there, so I had to go into producer mode. Didn't mean to throw you there.
All right, so we have a great guest today.
I know we've made friends already in the past hour.
He's very likable. He's very easy to
Should have
become
recorded
friends
our interview. We shared, we bonded, we cried.
with. Well, good, because then you can be part of this great conversation today instead of just that usual court jester that you are.
Oh, I plan to be that.
So, George, usually I ask you a little bit about what went on for the weekend, but I want to know, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're doing things over and over again, same things, whether they're destructive or constructive things, but you find that you're sort of
like habits or neurotic repetition kind of things?
all of the above?
Sure, both, positive and negative, absolutely.
And do you ever wonder why you do these things over and over? Like, what causes you, even if it's maybe something that's not very, very productive?
I do wonder why, and I have a fairly good idea why most of the time, but I can't say all of the time.
Well, I am going to bet within about 45 minutes from now, you're going to have a lot of the answers to those questions. So before we get into all of that, I just want to remind our guests, my name is Steve Gordon, and I am the CEO of the Gordon Partnership Group. We're a full-service consulting firm here in Jupiter, Florida. We have clients around the world, and we work one-on-one. We have CEO bootcamp. We have sales training, a marketing division, and we would love to come help your corporation to grow and to increase revenues in a myriad of ways. And I know by the time we're done today, you're going to learn so much about a topic that was completely foreign to me about a month ago. Not even. When did we meet, Kim?
2 or 3 weeks ago. Not
2 or
that
3
long.
weeks ago. So I want to take a second and introduce our guest today. And I have so many questions for you that even after meeting with you in my home for a couple of hours and in my office, and then my wife met with you for a while after that, I still have questions. So let me put on my glasses for a minute. Kim Potter, or Dr. Kim, as they like to refer to you. You are the CEO. You're a PhD. You're the CEO of Blueprint for Changes. And before we delve into the Blueprint for Changes program, I know the audience would like to know a little bit more about you as an individual. If you didn't catch it, that's not a New York accent. So you grew up in the United Kingdom.
Yes, I did.
Where in the UK?
In Torquay, Devon. It's one of the larger holiday resorts in southwest England.
Okay. My producer is telling me that I should move your mic a little
just
closer.
set up a little bit closer to the mic.
There we go. There we go. So it's in southwest England. And while you might not think this is a relevant question right this moment, tell me about your upbringing, your parents. Did you have siblings? What did your parents do?
My father was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. went on to start multiple businesses. My mother was a counselor. Completely different belief systems between mum and dad. Younger brother, 2 years younger. Grew up middle class, heavily exposed to, I'd say, a new age way of thinking through mother, which at the time I didn't know was either negative or positive, but it definitely opened my mind.
So, very, very polar opposites in a sense. To your
Completely.
parents. I mean, a fighter pilot, adrenaline pushing, and
Atheist, I would say.
okay.
Compared to somebody that was a heavy believer, so a lot of distance in between. Yes.
Okay, and then an entrepreneur.
Yes.
So what's interesting is now knowing who you are, because we've met before, obviously, I've told the audience a few times, I can understand now that you are a combination of both, because you are that sort of, I don't want to use the word new age, although you did, but that thinking that we're going to talk about in a minute, about how to change those things in your life that maybe are holding you back. And yet at the same time, the entrepreneurial spirit to say I'm not afraid to start my own business, or to say that I'm going to do it, that fighter pilot, I'm going to go from here to there, I'm go with me or don't, but we're going.
Yes.
And so it's interesting. So I also understand that you are very involved in the martial arts.
Yes, I am.
And I understand that you had an interesting tournament recently. You got a bronze medal in a very, very large competition. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so where was that competition?
The competition was in Georgia, the World Masters, and I achieved third place
In the
representing the United States.
And which form of martial arts?
Judo.
Judo. And so, you represent the United States because you know, are you a dual citizenship? Or
I chose to.
Okay.
I chose to. My father introduced me to the sport when I was 12, 13. He was rated in Great Britain one of the top. So logic would be that I would follow the same. It took me about a year and a half to get a national title, under 16, under 18, under 21, reserve, Olympic squad. So a lot of success very, very quick. Too quick, I'd say, yes.
Now, why do you say that?
I don't think mentally, emotionally I was prepared.
But physically, you were.
Physically, obviously, I was winning.
So when you say mentally not prepared, because obviously a lot of what we're going to talk about today has to do with how we think and how our brains work, and how we can train our brains in a sense, or reprogram them to help us accomplish big things. So knowing what you know now, do you think that if you had the knowledge that you have today, you might have been even better, because you would have been not only physically prepared, but even maybe mentally prepared to break through those barriers that maybe held you a little bit back?
The barriers were self-imposed. It really didn't mean the Judo Pacific, but I'm being diagnosed with Asperger's, social anxiety. So the problem I had was success. The more success I had, the more attention I got. And I did not like the attention.
That's interesting. Now, I remember when you and I first spoke in my office, you talked about the Asperger's. And George, you have a daughter,
Right, with autism.
with autism, and so I guess while I was stuck in traffic and you were here together, I'm sure you had that conversation.
We discussed that, sure.
Yeah, they
we
came
didn't,
up.
We didn't discuss judo, though. I would have spent a lot more time on that. Should have opened with that.
Well, if you really want to get to know George, ask him about the way he twirls fireballs. And
Yeah, we didn't get to that either. So there's a lot.
I'm sure we will later.
We were just scratching the surface there
Yes.
of how interesting we are.
Well, no, there's a lot of commonality here, and actually, George, what's interesting.
I can't do judo. So.
Well, you know what? You have to let other people be good at something.
This is true.
Best and highest use, George.
That's right.
You're the best producer in this room.
I wish I was as good at judo as I am at skating, because if I get into a situation, I can't say to my assailant, "Just hang on there, let me go get my skates." I'll show you a thing or two.
Yeah, so if you're a superhero, you would be Skate Boy.
Watch me spin. You know,
be Skate Man.
Yeah, that'll totally get me out of a fight.
Well, it might actually, because if
Yeah,
the other person can't run as fast as you can skate. Well, you know, it's interesting because George and I, this morning, were having a conversation prior to the show, and one of the things that you were saying about your daughter is that consistency,
Sure, is very
familiarity is very, very important.
Yes, it is.
And now you were sort of saying that you were self-imposed, and maybe the Asperger's had a little bit to do with your personal situation as well.
Yes.
And so, let me tell everybody a little bit more about you, and then I want to start to tie some of these things together because,
Okay.
you know, it's funny how you have one. I say to George every week, I come with pages of notes, and I never use them because the show takes a shape of its own, and that's always the best way anyway. So you are a PhD, but you are what is called a behaviorist.
That's correct.
Not a psychologist.
Right.
Psychology is more in what we do. I study why we do it. So mine is a lot deeper, and I've done this work both in animals and humans.
Well, and interesting because I was going to ask you how this whole program started. George and I just talked a little bit earlier. I was teasing him, and I said, "You ever think about the choices you make and why you do it?" But for a lot of people, you know, the word addiction. When we say addictions, right? They would think of alcohol addiction, or they would think of drug addiction, or maybe something other, but maybe of a substance. And yet, you said to me earlier when we first met that there are lots of addictions, and pretty much everything that we do is an addiction. Can you kind of elaborate on that to the audience? Because that'll lead us into where we're going to go.
Yes, I look at emotions, all emotions being addicted feelings. Feelings have a very precise meaning, and that's to feel our way through a situation. Once the feeling becomes addictive, there is no way of feeling through. It's more of a repetitive nature, and we will keep doing the same thing and never work our way through.
And that's because of the feeling that we get, that
Chemical
like an
stimulation.
endorphin type.
Yeah. Well, before we feel the emotion, there's a brain chemical stimulation, and this is what becomes addictive. We recognize the emotion, and we focus on our environment, so we start to point at our environment, and that is nothing to do with the underlying problem.
So, Blueprint for Changes is something that's really you started decades ago, at least the research portion.
Yes.
And from what I was reading online and our discussions, you put this together because you wanted something that didn't have a barrier of language.
It started a little deeper than that. I was responsible for the reproduction in endangered species of parrots. The parrot family is citizens, and I went out on a limb and started playing classical music to these parrots. They're in an indoor-outdoor environment, and I logically thought that the classical music would create a more consistent environment. We had owls, coyotes, and I thought that it would calm them. We documented the reproduction over many years. With classical music playing, we received an 8 to 12% increase in reproduction just because of the classical music. Well, I started doing something that I can't explain even today. I started turning the volume down.
Turning the volume down?
Down, until there was no volume. This was done over a period of about 6 months. The reproduction rates stayed consistent. So I started to question whether it was the music or not. So I switched it off. A month later, the reproduction went back to historical rates. I left it off for a couple months, simply switched a button with no volume. The reproduction went back to the 8 to 12% increased level. Over a period of time, somehow a mistake was made. Another CD found its way into the CD player, and because we had no volume, we didn't hear the change. The reproduction rate dropped down to 4% increase. This was very, very interesting and confusing, especially when I saw the old CD sitting side to the player. I turned the volume up. It was identical music. It was a pianist playing exactly the same music, but with a different result. So what it appeared, it was not the music. It was the actual artist. And why would he or she be able to stimulate a different result through to, let's put it down to, energy? Well, this started 17 years ago to, if this can be done through music, through sound, silent sound, I wonder how far we could take this.
So, same music, different results.
Yes.
So then, what led you to go? Okay, well, wait a minute. If it's not the music and it's not the CD, what led you to think then it was the energy coming from the CD? And what led you to extrapolate then that different artists could be giving off a different energy?
Well, from the mistake I made. So it wasn't a placebo where I was checking to see if it was a different result. I made a mistake and somehow put the wrong CD in because it was silent. I didn't notice. When I turned the volume up to check, I heard the same music. So I did not think it was that until months later I recognized it was a different CD. So then the possibilities of what influence do we have? And I say that started 17 years ago and ended up in a product being released that what held me up was I couldn't work out how to take it into a business format, how to produce this product.
So before we get into where you are today, now you've got this, the birds, they're producing, and you put the original CD back in, and the production of reproduction of the birds goes back up. So yesterday, I have a neighbor of mine who is a musician. He travels around the world, and I'm talking to him because he has two different lives on the road. He's in a rock band, but his real love is, when I say classical guitar, I mean not classical, but back to the original strings where the vibrations are different. And he says to me, I put my hands on the earth every single day, and I thank Mother Earth for, he's very, he would say New Age, right? Now, I know this is not New Age, but he also talked a lot about how he can hear vibrations often. Even when music is very, very low, he feels those vibrations in his body. And so he wanted me to ask you a little bit about that, because he says that he feels them they're very clear.
Yes.
And sometimes even if he's got something and he's outside the house, but maybe the music is playing inside the house, he can feel them internally. He's
Correct.
very in tune, so to say. Is this somewhat of where we're going?
Yeah, let's go a step deeper. Is this vibration we're talking about? Apparently, we all have our own individual vibration. And we're very good at being attracted to other vibrations. Now, let's say the vibration of behavior. Once we pick up on our trait to what we are attracted to, we will repeatedly get drawn to that same vibration. Now, let's go cut right down to relationships. We will find that we will be attracted to the same behavior from a different person. And it's all to do with this silent vibration. And we found a way how to stimulate the brain from those same vibrations and basically reteach it what to be attracted to.
So if there's something that is destructive, an addiction perhaps, or something that we do that we shouldn't be doing, or is damaging to our health, or our careers, then this system can go back in and reprogram the brain.
Yes, it's designed just to stimulate what we would say is destructive behavior. We're not looking to stimulate behavior that we deem as positive. It's just the negativity. The problem I had for many years, is how do we get an individual to be attracted to the right format of sound. Symbols came up. I can't explain how or why I decided to draw several symbols with one person's behavior in mind to see if I could attract that individual to what I deemed as their behaviorism represented in a symbol. It was successful. From that point, now I've designed 14 symbols. They're all pre-designed to attract a certain personality type. Now, 2 years of testing even surprised me. This was done with a concept. I believed it would work. I was shocked, absolutely shocked, when it actually worked better than I ever anticipated it could do.
Well, it's interesting because, George, one of the things that when I met with Kim originally in our office, Kim laid out 14, for those of you watching live or on a replay at some point, 14 CDs that each CD had a symbol. These are two different symbols here. And you said to us, you said to myself and to Lori, my wife, you said, don't really think about it. Just grab the CD that attracts you.
Correct.
Like that grabs your attention. And you wouldn't tell us what they meant because you thought that would either, you felt like it would maybe take away from the program.
I had an experience, I think, people, if I put a visualization, I saw this bookstore, and they were marketing as one of the largest bookstores in the United States. And I bet there's many people that claim that. So I took the opportunity to take these 14 symbols into this store and ask for a meeting with the owner. And I was very clear that I was not looking to sell anything. So he said, "What's this about?" I said, "Have you already chosen one?" He said, "Yes." And I'd already observed body language. I said, "It's this one, right?" And he said, "Yes." "How does this work?" he said. I said, "How does your store work?" He said, if somebody comes in here, per se, with anxiety, they go to the anxiety section. And I said, "And they choose a pretty color?" He said, "Well, yes, they choose what they resonate with." And I said, "And what do they do with that?" He said, "They buy it and take it home." And I said, "They feel better?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I want you to observe your body language when I tell you what symbol you've chosen." He crossed his arms at an upper level and said, "It wasn't anxiety, was it?" I said, "Yes, it was." He said, "Well, what does that one mean? What does that mean?" He fell into instant denial, knowing the label that he was attracted to.
Well, it's interesting because he knew what it was anyway.
Not before.
Well, he said it wasn't anxiety, was it?
Well, yes, because that's, I would say, was his trait.
Well, but do you think that, inherently, do you feel like he knew anyway?
Of course he did.
Of course he did, right.
Yes.
So asking you that question really was just validating what he already knew anyway.
Yes. He'd already attracted to it. So he knew, but not so much in a word format.
Interesting. So what happened after that?
He said to me, "This could be a problem." And I said, "Yes, especially if it works." Now, typically, the way we look at this, New Age, is we look at what we attract to, what we resonate with. We don't resonate with change. We resonate with who we are, and we will be attracted to doing exactly the same behavior. So how does logic and how we've been resonating with something going to install change in us? It's virtually impossible.
Well, let me ask you a question. So I am standing on a stage, and I'm giving a seminar one night, and sitting in the front row is the woman who's now my wife. But we didn't speak that night. I mean, we crossed in the hallway, and someone introduced us for 10 seconds, and I was really in my own zone because I was preparing for my seminar, and I was just, "Hi, nice to meet you," and carrying my stuff because I had to get up on stage and be there, and probably was, just in my own world. And yet, when we met and spoke, it was immediate. There was no denying that this was there were two magnets that were being pulled together, and they were supposed to be. So when you have a great resonation, I mean, I'm assuming that the pull can be really constructive as well.
We're talking about attraction, right? That we can say that you were attracted to this lady. Now, if that was a low level of chemistry, to feel the same, what do we need? We need a higher stimulation to create the same feeling. And it's that exact chemistry of attraction that falls into the word we deem as love.
Okay. And so when that chemistry is there, that higher level of chemistry, then, and it's on both sides, that's the magnet that sticks.
Yes. But we could say Janet and John that fight like cat and dog each day are also in love, and they were initially attracted to each other. And we could even say that they're in total harmony with each other.
Because that's their connection.
Because that's their connection. That's their behaviorism.
It's interesting because I often think back on even my own parents' relationship. And when I lost my mother, what will be 4 years ago this summer, I remember sitting down and saying to my father, you guys, I never really was sure how in love they were, right? And my dad looked at me one day without even being asked. He said, your mother and I, we loved each other, and we held hands every night, and we kissed goodnight every night. And I'm thinking there was no way, because I didn't feel that harmony, but it wasn't my harmony to feel. It was their harmony to feel. Mm-hmm. And from what you're saying.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, despite the fact that I thought that maybe, it wasn't the world's greatest relationship, you're saying because it was their vibrations, it was their chemistry that in their brains.
It was their relationship.
And that's what kept them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they were married, for close to 60 years.
Very unusual.
Very unusual.
With the world changing as quick as what it does today, we're finding the relationships will fall apart a lot quicker. Two individuals working, let's say, in two individual environments are induced to change, grow apart. And that's going to happen more and more and more as we see the world adopt this change.
You're talking about being in two separate, just work environments.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that because, you end up spending more time in your work environment than your home environment. When you do get back to your home environment, then you're sort of in your own world trying to just get everything ready for the next day, maybe getting a meal on the table, taking care of the kids. And by the time you have time for each other, you're tired, and B, what stimulated you during the day emotionally to be successful or to have a great day doesn't involve your partner. And what stimulated your partner didn't involve you. So you have these two separate worlds of different people and different things that are driving what I would guess you're going to say is another chemical reaction.
Correct.
Am I getting this?
Correct, yes.
Wow. Pretty good, George.
Pretty good, I got to say. I got a frog.
Anyway, okay. So this is really, really interesting. I want to take this to the next level. Let's talk in a minute about maybe people with addictions, talk about how they can be involved in the program, how it works, what they do. There's a lot that we have to cover. But right now, I want to just take a quick break. And so this is Steve Gordon. I'm with Kim Potter and George Rodriguez on CEOmanship on SoFloRadio.com.
More CEOmanship with Steve Gordon next on SoFloRadio.com.
By the Glass.
By the Glass is a show about beverage culture.
Brad Hubbard.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the dots on how everything works together. It's really all about how we enjoy things, how we enjoy life, and how beverages play a big part in that. I'm going to bring in people that are going to display their aspect of the culture. I'm going to bring in people that are going to show you different products. We're going to look at places where people go to consume these beverages and how they all interact. Things are built around the actual beverage itself.
By the Glass. Thursdays from 6 to 7. Only on SoFloRadio.com. Put a team of professional consultants behind your home or business computer with Key Information Solutions, providing solutions to your internet and computing needs while keeping you on the cutting edge of technology. Preventative maintenance and networking support, hardware and custom-built computers. Let Key Information Solutions be your personal tech staff for your home or office with affordable hourly, monthly, or annual rates to fit anyone's budget. Call Key Information Solutions now. 954-973-3374. That's 954-973-3374. Or visit keyinformation.com.
When you're ready to actually lose weight safely and steadily while being monitored by a physician, the Weight Loss Clinic of Dr. Kim Jacobson is there for you. The family medicine practice was established by her father in 1956 and continues as a medical practice that now specializes in weight reduction. Dr. Kim Jacobson joined the practice 20 years ago as both a family medicine practitioner and weight loss specialist. The Weight Loss Clinic utilizes a combination of appetite suppression medication and vitamins to produce great results, usually 3 to 4 pounds per week for most patients. Now you can change your lifestyle while still enjoying your own food, just less of it. They offer a choice of 2, 3, or 4-week plans. So whether you just need to lose a few pounds or a lot, the Weight Loss Clinic of Dr. Kim Jacobson can help you. They're located at 5454 Northeast 4th Avenue in Miami, just 2 blocks west of 54th Street and Biscayne Boulevard. Call them at 305-751-0091. They'll be happy to answer any and all of your questions. That's 305-751-0091. Get started on a beautiful new body today with Dr. Kim Jacobson and the Weight Loss Clinic.
Now, back to CEOmanship with Steve Gordon on SoFloRadio.com.
Well, it's good to be back, and I am with Kim Potter, CEO of Blueprint for Changes. Kim, when you came into my office, I had a very unique situation. Maybe it's not unique. I thought it was unique because you said, okay, here you spread these 14 CDs, these symbols out, and you said, well, pick the one that you're attracted to.
I remember.
And I picked 2 because I never do anything easy, right?
You gotta be complicated, don't you?
I'm a little complicated. And I said, should I just go for the one I initially thought? And you said, well, it's not up to you, basically. You said it's up to me. Do what I need to do.
Correct.
And so I took them both. And that's why I have these 2 right here, because those are my CDs. And I have one of them playing in my home. It's still playing right now, and our audience will understand why in a minute or a few minutes. But so what were you thinking at that moment? Can I ask you, when I grabbed these 2 and I said, well, okay, I'm taking 2.
Well, you gave extra information. You gave me information to why you chose those, and you said you liked the balance in them. And I said, well, I think you've made a good choice. I was rather confused because I couldn't quite work out the traits I knew of those symbols had not been expressed at any level from you. And they're two pretty strong personalities.
Just like the gentleman at the bookstore, I knew.
Yeah.
We all know inherently what our Achilles heels are, right? Or our challenges.
At some level.
If you're at all intuitive, or if you care, then you know. Or if you have someone in your life who's with you, they'll let you know. I'm sure that any one of us who's married, at some point their spouse has said, that was a very whatever move, or you're this type of personality, and they let you know that that's not an attractive trait, at least in their minds. So I certainly was aware of my traits. It was just amazing to me that I pulled the 2 images that were exactly correct.
Yeah, they were word perfect.
They were perfect. It was crazy.
You were honest to verbalize what you felt, your challenges in this life. And those were the exact symbols you chose. So your brain was being attracted to the meaning of that. Now, that's very important.
Okay. Well, you say you were being very honest. The reality is, I want this to work. If I have challenges that we can fix together.
Yes.
And this program is going to do what you tell me it's going to do, and it has done for other people. Then why would I not? Be honest. I mean, it's like, why would you lie to your therapist? It's not. That's crazy.
Because of denial. when we structurally go through change, physical change in the brain, what it means is the behavioral cells at some level have to physically die off. So it puts a meaning, use it or lose it. So parts of us have to die off, and they're not comfortable with that.
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you and Lori and I were introduced through a mutual friend or associate and somebody else you were working with. And she's great. She's a very, very strong and driven woman. And she, I guess, called Lori and just said, "This guy's coming over," you know, not Kenny. And it was, all right, fine. But I want you to know that I had a conversation with Abby not that long ago, and maybe a week ago, and she said, "I have to tell you that there have been incredible changes in our family. And some of those go beyond those living in the immediate household." So let's talk a little bit about so the steps of the program a little bit and how these changes take place. So the first thing is one would pick their symbol.
Correct.
And for those who can't work directly with you like I did, if somebody lives on the other side of the pond, as you say,
yes.
They can go right online
Yes.
to blueprintforchanges, I guess, .com.
Yes.
And they can go through this process and select a symbol, and then they would download two
sound file.
Two sound files, correct?
Yes, correct.
And one of those sound files has music playing on it in the background.
Correct.
And the other sound file, I guess, has the same music, but it's silent.
Correct. For somebody who's skeptical, we've left a small amount of volume on the silent sound file, so you can turn it up and confirm it is exactly the same sound file as the one you can hear. Now, there's no subliminal message on this, and there's no computer tones utilized, which are commonly utilized in sound files of this format. We do not use that format.
So I remember when I was younger, in my 20s, I would fall asleep listening to some of those CDs, or I guess cassettes back in those days, and they would have the sound of maybe the ocean playing, and in the background I could hear, clearly the little messages being, you're smart, you're driven, you're successful, you're good looking, whatever. I guess it all worked. Anyway, oh, that's going to get me in trouble. Anyway, don't be tweeting in any comments, audience. So, but you're saying there's no underlying message.
Is attract the brain so it perceives it's going to experience one of the historical emotional experiences that we deem as challenging. So it starts to physically, emotionally look for this experience. We transfer that to a sound file. You listen to this 21-minute sound file 1 to 3 times. You haven't got to really concentrate. You don't need to put headphones on, just listen. And then you start the silent sound file. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Put it on repetition. You have not even got to be in the same room. You do not have to be in the same building, meaning you can go to work, you can sleep, and it will still stimulate the brain. The brain is so used to finding the experience quickly, it soon realizes it's going to have difficulty here, and it starts to relax. The key word is starts to relax. And it starts to attempt to seek out historical experiences that are impossible for it to find. And it just simply starts to relax. And this starts to affect everybody around us, not even in the same household. We've had responses that are amazing from young children that have not been exposed to any of these sound files. The sound files were played in an office, somewhere away from the children, and I will say miracles have happened, things that can't be explained in changes in these children.
So, without mentioning obviously names, what would be an example of something that happened maybe where parents were listening or an adult was listening at home, and a change that occurred to somewhere outside?
I think I can share this. I went to a web designer. I went to seek out the right person to promote a product like this, and I found this beautiful Indian lady. Her mother was an MD, her sister's an MD, And she started to become curious to what this product was about. And I explained how it worked. She explained that she'd been around a very medical background, that this was a stretch for her. I said, then play it in your office. I haven't got to tell anybody, she said. I said, no, play it in your office. A couple of weeks later, I get a call. Now, what she didn't tell me, she had a 6-year-old boy that I've met, now 7, who's an absolute genius. Her 3-year-old girl was not talking, just baby talk. 2 weeks after this process started, she muttered a word. After 3 weeks, she put a sentence together. The stepmother, who's an MD, started to become very curious to what was going on. Nobody was told, so we can eliminate the placebo test. I went to visit my web designer after 4 or 5 months, and she looked at me with a smile on her face and said, I have a problem. I said, what is it? She said, my little girl is answering me back. Now, this could be just circumstantial, but it's not the only one. We got numerous situations like this.
Well, you know, it's interesting because you said that she said she came from a medical family. I said to you, I'm an engineer. I'm a computer programmer and engineer. And I started the conversation saying, I'm very open-minded, but for me, A plus B has to equal C because that's my brain. That's just how I'm wired, so to say. I guess that's what we're talking about today. But I did have an open mind, and you know, I also stare up at the stars sometimes and go, okay, logically I go, where does it end? But if it ends somewhere, what's behind that? And I could keep myself up for weeks trying to figure that out. So at a certain point, I just go, it is what it is. I can't figure it out. I'll never know the answer, but it's beautiful, and that's what it is, and move on. And that was the same way I approached this program. So let's just say that somebody, we started by talking about autism. So we'll use George, if I can, as an example.
Sure.
So let's say that George said to you after the show, you know what, Kim, what could we do? Is there something here that might be a benefit to my child, to my daughter? Without her having to necessarily be listening to this, are you saying that if George were to listen to some of these sound files, that there might be some potential impact?
I can almost guarantee there is. But the biggest hurdle to get over in a situation like this, George, is, and we're not looking to point fingers, is if we were able to stimulate your brain differently, then there's going to be a different response received by your daughter. So we do it because we are taking responsibility for ourselves. We don't do this for somebody else's gain. We do this for ourselves.
Sure.
Now, a symptom of that is the people around us, if they have been responding to us historically, they're going to start to respond differently.
Right.
We don't want a mother to rush out and go, well, this can help my daughter, purchase this sound file and put it in a player just for the sole purpose to improve her daughter or son. It works from her brain. So she's got to invest some credibility, some responsibility, herself or himself.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say right on. No, acknowledged. I don't have anything to say back to that, although I know that she's very audially stimulated as it is. Music is very important to her. What she listens to, because we spoke before the show that when we roller skate, she listens to her own music. When we're driving in the car, she has to. She plays DJ, as we call it. She takes my iPhone, and I have 50 gigs of music in there, and she decides what we listen to. Not that she won't take requests, but she has a definite opinion and of what she wants to listen to, and it's very varied. So I think that, I know for a fact that that children with autism do respond to sounds, and that was one of the first things that we learned, that we discovered, is that she's very sensitive to sounds. Indeed, a lot of the children with autism have to wear the noise-canceling headphones that I've noticed because too much sound, too many sounds, too many different sounds, they're processing it all. So I absolutely see the logic of using sound to influence the children.
Steve had mentioned his next door neighbor is the musician, being able to sense sound played from his house, he could feel the change in vibration. Well, if we were to elaborate on that and compare that vibration coming from our brains, we look at communication as 20% being verbal. So there's 80% we don't fully understand. And if we're transmitting information that way, and we were to change that information we've been transmitted, wouldn't we expect people to respond differently to us? It makes absolute sense that there would be a change.
It does. Oh, by the way, I should mention I can show the CDs that you chose if you want.
Sure.
I took,
as long as you want to tell me what they mean.
I took steps. Well, yeah, take a good. These are the CDs that you chose.
That I chose, yeah. So there's so many things. I mean, I sit there and I am a very big believer in putting things out in the universe.
Yes.
In other words, you have to ask the universe or tell the universe what it is that you want. We've talked about that in this show before. Because when you put it out there, then it will come back to you, I believe. I believe that if you do good things, it comes back to you. It's all part of, that harmony of the universe. And it sounds to me that in some ways, although I'm not, I don't want to put words in your mouth, that this too sort of plays in the same role, because what we're putting out in our own vibration affects those around us. By changing our vibrations, the internal vibrations that become external, then those around us react differently than just like the birds did.
I'm a conservationist, and what I discovered, my goal was to reproduce endangered species, to place them back into the wild. To my horror, there's so much of the natural environment destroyed, there is nowhere. So as a conservationist, I took responsibility. It's us as human beings that are doing this damage. And if we don't become more aware of ourselves, we're going to destroy this place that we call home.
So our audience is predominantly business owners, CEOs, maybe upper management, sales managers. They come to the show to learn how to grow their business, to become more successful on lots of different levels. So speaking to a business owner who says to you, Kim, how can we use this program with our employees, for example, or would I use it myself? What would you recommend to a business owner?
As I say, anybody interested in this product, try it yourself. Once you get results yourself, then you'll understand how you can utilize this accordingly in your business. But high recommendation, use it yourself first and see what it can do for you.
All right. So, and again, your personal issue or whatever it is that your image, because it changes you, then it may impact the way your employees react to you. It may impact, or it will impact, the way your employees react to you, the environment of your workplace, and then that ripple effect could go out into even from employees to potential customers, because everybody's feeling that vibe.
Absolutely. It's unlimited to how far this connection can spread. But we've got to take responsibility, because it starts off with us. This starts that process, and it's the easiest thing you can do. What's more than listening to a product in silence? There's no titles on these, so nobody understands what it is. You're not being invasive from anybody else's space. They may not even know what you're doing.
So let me ask you, now Lori, she picked a different symbol.
Correct.
And so there are times when Lori is playing her sound file, and sometimes I'm playing my sound file. Is there a potential conflict of sound files and vibrations because the two of us have them going on in the house at the same time?
I can answer that quite simply. We have two brains stimulated that are attracted to each other, that feed off different information. You've both been attracted to different symbols that stimulate your brain individually in a way. It makes no difference how many symbols are played in one environment. Absolutely not.
It's good to know it's not going to twist your brain.
I know. I was really nervous about that. I have to tell you.
I got to worry about the brain twisting.
Yeah, well, you're already twisted, George. All right, so let me go on to the next. And on this show, we are very open. And so Lori's come on here, and she has, we bare our souls, so to say. After the demise of my first marriage, my divorce, unfortunately, the relationship that I have with my children has gone awry. And I could say there's a lot of reasons. But my question, without getting too deep into why or who feels this or who said that, is if there's somebody else in a situation like mine, their child has an addiction problem, or they're estranged from a family member, like in my case, for example, what would you recommend? I mean, again, just change yourself and let the world sort of take its place?
If we use you as an example,
Please do.
Steve, in this, and we will make this fictitious. If you were to start listening to this and you were to experience these changes that you couldn't explain, there was no other variant, I just simply ask you a question, what would you do? If your children, the communication, contact with them has improved, the advice I would give was continue what you're doing. I mean, we can't impose on other people to what we think, but we can lead by example. And if they start to see changes in us, what's a better example than that?
Well said. So part of the program is that you're supposed to look at or have your symbol in front of you pretty much as often as possible.
Correct.
Why is this portion as important as playing the music 24/7? And what happens if you're traveling and there's a power outage and your CD player on your computer shuts down and it's not playing for a couple of days? I mean, do you have to start again?
Great questions. The reason when we first saw the symbol, we were attracted to it. When we move on to the sound file, it takes that level of traction onto the sound. We go into the silent, and now this is where flexibility starts to happen. So every time our brain is stimulated by the initial historical stimulation, it ventures out to where we are at that point. This is called momentum. So it's actually recognizing where we are to where we are now. This is exactly what we want to do. So the more we view the historical stimulation, it takes us to where we are. Now, the historical stimulation could be being stimulated by a partner or children, the environment. We want to move on from that challenge. Viewing the symbol does this. Now, very interesting the second, if it was to stop. We've had people very, very skeptical of this. To how could this possibly work? Those same people on a trip, being out of the house, have verbalized that they recognized when the sound file was switched off or stopped. They recognized something and they were an unbeliever. What happens in this situation, if it's more than a day or two, stimulate the brain by going back to the audible and then moving on to the silent.
So just for our audience's sake, I'll tell you what I've done. So I have the CDs, and I also now have imported them into iTunes.
Okay.
And so you can literally play on a repeat on your iTunes, for example, over and over and over, whether it's the audible or the silent file.
Well, we really want to stick to the silent file because with the audible file, consciousness is involved. We want to eliminate conscious. And we put no sound, so we're not disturbing anybody. So we could have this repetitively playing. It's not going to disturb anybody because they don't know.
I can tell you that when Lori's mom passed away and she was up with her father for a few days, I had realized that her CD wasn't playing, and so I went in and put it into her computer, and I just let it play over and over again because I didn't want that disruption. But at the same time, I felt like it was something important that she needed that while she was away. And you told me it didn't matter whether she was in New York with her dad or she was here in Florida in our house. And so I did do that. And when she came home, I said to her, she said, she mentioned something about it, and I said, I did. I turned it on. And I left it on because, I didn't want you to have that break. And I realized that our computers had stopped and that we needed to get it rebooted. And I wanted you to have that continuity. You're smiling. So we're in. Speaking of I hear you have a book coming in soon.
How do you know that?
I know everything. It's my job. That's why they call me the host and you the guest and George the producer.
That's right, among other things. They call me a
Can
lot
we
of
talk
other
about that?
things.
Yes.
It's a great name.
Well, this came as a complete shock to me with the challenges the Asperger's bring to me. I hoped this would happen in the future. I was totally unprepared for somebody to approach me with a contract for this. And I'm halfway through a book that's expected April, May of this year. And the secret of changing brain chemistry by doing nothing.
Nothing is my favorite thing to do. I always tell people.
I thought skating was your favorite thing to do.
It is. I tell people that when I train people here, when it's oftentimes they have to do nothing, and they don't do the nothing. They do something instead, and I say, you're supposed to do nothing right there. And I happen to know that nothing is easier to do than nothing. Rocks and logs are capable of it. So if you're not capable of doing nothing, then you have a problem.
You want them to observe.
Well, there are times when things need to happen, and they need to allow things to happen, rather than act. As a producer, there are specific things that you ought to be doing, and specific things that you ought not to be doing, like talking.
Well, it's interesting because in consulting, it's just the antithesis. My job is to sit down with the client and say, okay, here's a roadmap, and if you do this, and then you do this, this change will will impact this, and this will affect this, and this is what our end result will be. I like to work from the end. What do you want? Okay, here's how we're going to get there. So when my source told me about the name of your book, The Secret of Changing Brain Chemistry by Doing Nothing, I thought that was really interesting because my whole career is about teaching people to do something. So
I can't wait to read it, and so that I can start.
Here's the great part:
you don't have to start doing nothing.
You don't have to do anything because that would be doing something.
Yeah, right.
Well, you have a good voice, so I hope the audio book is going to be, right on the heels of the visual.
There you
book.
go.
Yeah.
But you'll have to listen to the silent one. It's very easy to record that one.
Yeah.
So, how does somebody find you? How does someone read more about the program, learn more about the program, subscribe to the program, eventually get your book in the next few months when it's ready? How do they find you?
Blueprintforchanges.com.
Blueprintforchanges.com.
Appropriately named.
Well, that's a great name for a great program. And is there anything else that you have coming up on the horizon that we should know about?
We have a product that is specifically designed for autism. I don't know how many people are aware of the figures that are coming out expected in the next 10 years.
Yeah.
We're looking for it to affect 1 in 2 children. That's going to be
something's going on.
Yeah.
There's no question about it.
That's a disaster.
It is.
Yeah. So theme stimulation is in the works, and it is fine-tuned to help these children.
Well,
that's great work.
It is great work.
Speaks to my soul.
Kim Potter, Dr. Kim, as
Thank
you
you.
are referred to. No, thank you. Thanks for making the drive down several hours to beautiful Hollywood, Florida. It is a great little place and a great little studio. George.
Steve.
It is always a pleasure to be with you.
Pleasure's
You make
mine.
my week. You make my Monday. You make me smile. My name is Steve Gordon. Don't forget, if you tuned in a little late and you want to see the beginning of this show, all of this show, it was excellent. Kim Potter, you were great. Blueprintforchanges.com. You can go to my website, CEOmanship.com, and we will have a replay of this show within a little bit after this show is completed. You can also go subscribe to CEOmanship on iTunes. Don't forget on Facebook, it's Follow Steve Gordon. Don't forget on LinkedIn, you can search for Steve Gordon and Gordon Partnership. On Instagram, it's Gordon Partnership. GordonPartnership.com for our consulting. Once again, Kim Potter, Dr. Kim, you were great. I think everybody learned something, and I will come back and tell our audience about the changes as they happen.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Have a great week. We'll be back next Monday. Steve Gordon on CEOmanship, SoFloRadio.com.
Stand
live from the beautiful city of Hollywood, Florida, USA. This is SoFloRadio.com.